Hey, welcome to Hambone Publishing, where you write the words and we do everything else. My name's Fink, and in the next couple of minutes I just want to help you get your ideas out of your head and into a manuscript that turns into a book as quickly, as easily and as effectively as possible. I'm the author of 2 books, and one of the things I know is that I'm pretty good at writing the words, and everything else I want someone else to handle, and I think you just might be the same. And what I also know is that there are some bad habits that authors like you and me can adopt, and usually have adopted, having grown up in the world of Bill Gates and Microsoft Word, which we need to unlearn if we're going to make this project of creating a book as easy as we possibly can. This isn't going to prevent you from writing a book if you don't take this on. But what it's going to do is it's going to make it quicker, and it's going to make it cheaper, because any of the mistakes that you kind of incorporate into your manuscript, you have to pay someone else to fix them on the back end. And so what I hope to teach you here in just a few minutes is some good habits for writing your book, for creating your manuscript, so that the rest of the process is as quick and easy and cheap as possible. So I'm going to be talking specifically about Microsoft Word, because in my experience, that's what most people are going to be using. Now, you may have Scrivener, or you might be a Mac person and you use Pages, or you might be working collaboratively with a bunch of people, in which case I recommend you use Google Docs, because collaborative work, you always risk losing data, and Google Docs is very good like that. But I'm going to talk today specifically about Microsoft Word, but the concepts that we're sharing are really universal, and they apply no matter which app you're using to write your book, okay? The mistakes that we tend to make are common to all those apps, and the solution to those mistakes is common to all those apps. So everyone's familiar with Microsoft Word, and that's what most people are going to be using, I'd suggest, so we will focus in Word today. So let's go to Word now and look at a basic document. So you fire up Microsoft Word and you've got a blank document. And typically what you're going to do is you're going to start typing. Now, I don't want to bore you with whatever's on my mind right now, so I am just going to paste. I love this. It's from a website called Bogan Ipsum. It's like Lorem Ipsum, but it uses ridiculous Australianisms. Makes me laugh every time. Okay, so we're going to type a bunch of stuff into our document. And there are 3 common mistakes that people make as they start to write their book in Microsoft Word. Mistake number 1 is using formatting tools to change the look and feel of your fonts instead of styling tools. Okay? The second mistake is we use keystrokes to change the layout of your document instead of using the paragraph styling tools. And the third mistake that we make is writing and then reading and then rereading and rewriting the introduction over and over again, because it's the first thing you see every time you open your document. Massive time waster. So, as I said, for the next few minutes, I want to address all 3 of those super common mistakes that we make. So the first one is using the formatting tools to change the look and feel of fonts rather than the font styling tools. Now, there's a distinction here to learn about. It's only very mildly technical, and I think that together you and we can work it out. So what do I mean by font formatting tools? So let's say in the 3rd sentence of my Bogan Ipsum, I really wanted to emphasize the word chook for some reason. So typically what I do if I want to emphasize a word in Microsoft Word is I go, I really want people to emphasize the word chook in this sentence, and I'll come up and I'll use one of these formatting tools. I'll either press bold, right, or I could press italic, right, or I could press underline, or if I have no sense of restraint in design, I could use all 3, as I have just. And now, when someone reads this sentence, they're going to emphasize the word chook. Now, there's a problem with the strategy that we've just taken, and that is that we haven't actually encoded any meaning into what we've done here. All we've done is made this particular word bold, underlined, and italic, right? Now, obviously, your designer and your typesetter aren't going to take your book to its finished professional form using Microsoft Word. All this information is going to get taken out of your Word document and put into something more professional like Adobe InDesign or a bunch of other apps. And they're all better suited to taking your manuscript and massaging the look of it so that it comes out as the finished professional book that you obviously have envisaged. Now, at the moment, when we transport that text from app to app, from place to place, from designer to typesetter, from author, blah, 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 like there's all these different people and applications involved in the process, and there is a grave danger here. And that is that our efforts to emphasize words or put meaning into the document beyond just the actual keystrokes can be lost. Because when we're changing fonts and how they look, you might try your book in a few different fonts until you find the look that you really like. These changes are at great risk of being lost because they're not kind of encoded into the text. They're just, in a sense, pasted on the top. It's almost like painting your car, but just doing it with chalk. It can wash off in the rain. And what we want to do is paint it with something more lasting, and we want to really encode it into the document. But I reckon you actually know how to do this, you just haven't done it very much. So let's say I started my document with what I wanted to be a heading. Right, I've called it heading the title. I'm pretty sure you will have before highlighted that and come along and selected from this styles pane. And you click and encode it and say it's heading 1, or it's even in fact the title of the document. Now this does change the size and the look and the font and the boldness and the italicness and the underlinedness, right? All this is changing when I'm using the styles pane. But there's a very important difference. What's going on behind the scenes here is that the meaning, i.e. that this is supposed to be a heading or that this is supposed to be an emphasized word, is actually baked into the manuscript rather than just pasted on top. Okay? So when you use any of the styles here in the style pane, you're doing a lot more than just changing the look of the text. You're actually telling the manuscript this text has a meaning beyond just the words that are there. It is a heading, or it is a word to be emphasized, or it is something to live in a breakout box, or any of the other myriad of options that you've got when creating a book. So the short version of the story is everything over here, the bold, italic, the changing the size, the choosing the font, anything where you're accessing that formatting manually is a no-no when you're an author creating a manuscript that you want turned into an incredible book. You've got to have the discipline to use the right styles to encode the meaning deep into the manuscript to ensure that it flows through all the different people involved in the process, all the different apps that are involved in the process, and makes it into the final finished book. It would be a real shame if there was a critical sentence buried in a paragraph deep in your book which lost the emphasis on the word that needed to be emphasized because you just pressed italic rather than styling the text as for emphasis. We'll get into that a little bit more in a sec. So, bad habit number 1, using the formatting tools over here on the left rather than the styling tools over here on the right. Okay? Do the right thing, use the styling tools. So the second bad habit is using keystrokes to change the layout of your document rather than the paragraph styling tools. So what do I mean by that? Let's scroll down here and let's say this last bit was actually a new paragraph and I had a second heading here. Whoops, can't type. So I'm going to call this one heading 2 and style it as appropriate. And in looking at it, I go, oh, yeah, gee, that's right near the bottom of the page. It would kind of make more sense if that was just on the next page. Yeah, it looks kind of stupid there because the text is going to keep going afterwards. So I'll just press enter a few times. There we go. It's on a new page, and on I go. So what I've done here is I've used keystrokes to adjust the layout. And that's quick, and it's easy now. In future, what you've just done is you've added a bunch of what's essentially junk data into the manuscript, and you're going to pay someone else to find and remove that junk data later. Because remember, this document is not going to be in Microsoft Word when it gets turned into a finished book. All of these words are going to get taken out of Microsoft Word and put into another piece of software. The page size probably isn't going to be the same as what's in Microsoft Word. In fact, you might experiment with different sizes as you get near to the end of your book project, as you're deciding exactly how do I want it to look and feel. And so all this junk data that you've introduced has to get removed. And most of it has to get removed by a well-paid, clever person doing a professional job, and they're doing it manually. It's slow, it's laborious, and if you're not the one doing it, it's expensive. So don't use these types of shortcuts, that is just using the enter key to move text downwards or pressing spacebar lots of times to indent text. All of this stuff should be done with proper paragraph styling tools. And here's the thing, at this point of the project where you're creating the manuscript, you're creating the meaning of your book, none of it really actually matters. It doesn't matter what it looks like in Microsoft Word, so long as you know where you are and what you're talking about. All of this stuff to make it look nice and sit right on the page and read smoothly and all that kind of stuff, that all happens later in the process. Your job right now is just to write the words in, and so what you want to avoid is adding in this junk stuff to get the layout in Microsoft Word right, because it doesn't matter, and we have to remove that junk later. If you do know how to use the right tools like page breaks and indentation, styling and all that sort of stuff, by all means, go for your life. If you don't worry about it. Someone else will sort that out for you way quicker than you could and do a better job of it because they're a professional designer or typesetter, and it's going to look really, really cool at the end. So mistake number one is using the font formatting tools rather than the styling tools to encode the meaning of the words in your book, in your manuscript. The second mistake is to use keystrokes to try and change the layout rather than the paragraph styling tools. And the third mistake is to write and then read and then reread and then rewrite ad nauseum the introduction to your book over and over again. One of the problems of Microsoft Word is that when you open the document, you're going to open it at the front page. And what we always do when we open a new window is we just start reading, because brains are like that. And we want to avoid that. So the way we do that is we have a table of contents at the very beginning of your document. And I don't know if you knew this, but the table of contents in Microsoft Word is made of magic. And it's actually like a web page, and it contains hyperlinks. So I'm going to take you now to the template that we're encouraging you to download on this page to write your book. It starts with a table of contents, which is set up as this magic hyperlinking tool. So let's go there now. So what we're looking at here is the Hambone template file that I have double-clicked once after downloading it, and it's opened a new document in Microsoft Word, which already has all this template stuff in it. And I'm looking at the first page of the first chapter, right? And so you can see it's designed to look a bit like your business book may end up looking like when you're finished. But by all means, it's still just a Microsoft Word document. And the cool thing about it is it's a template which is designed for you to open and then replace the existing words with your words and kind of get underway writing your book. But the cool thing is this template has all the instructions of how to use the template in the template. So open it up, read through it, understand it all, and then delete it and replace it with your words as you start writing your manuscript. But let's go up to the very, very beginning of the template, and you'll notice there is this table of contents. Now this is a dynamic table of contents, which means that Microsoft Word actually creates it automatically. And as I said, it acts like a web page, and it's got hyperlinks. So what I'm going to do here, this is very convenient because I want to talk to you about some of the other common styles that are encoded into this template. And in order to get there, I can just click the link. So I want to talk to you about the other common styles. I'm just going to click here, and you'll see, kabam! It takes me directly to page 7 in the document, and we're ready to start talking about it. So by using this template and keeping that table of contents up to date, each time you sit down at your desk, open up your computer, and fire up Microsoft Word to start writing your manuscript, rather than just kind of accidentally starting to read the introduction yet again and modify the introduction yet again, your job is to look through your table of contents that you'll have set up, find a part of your book that you're interested in or that you've got some ideas about, click on the link to it and dive straight in. So the whole point of this video and of this template is to help you stop using the formatting tools and use the styling tools so that the meaning and the intent of all the words in your manuscript is effectively communicated right through the publication process until we have a finished book. And so I'm just going to quickly walk you through some of the other common styles that this template has set up, which you'll probably recognize from a bunch of non-fiction books you've read before. And you may choose to use them, but you don't have to feel obliged. You don't have to use all these styles. And we've kept it relatively minimal. There's not too many different options. We're trying not to get too complex and confusing, but let's talk about a few of the options. So often, it's really common in non-fiction books to start a chapter with a quote. And so we've got a style called It's Very Common to Start a Chapter with a Quote. And if we go back to, this style pane here, you'll see there's actually a style called Chapter Beginning Quote. So your job, once you've found the quote that you want to use at the beginning of a chapter, is to simply type it into your document, highlight it, and then style it here with the chapter beginning quote. And it's going to center align it, it's going to italicize it, it's going to encode the fact that this is the quote at the beginning of a chapter into the document. And as you and your designers and your typesetters decide how you want that to look later, we can just change it once in the styling guide and then it flows all the way through the manuscript and updates on every single page because you've done the right thing and encoded it with a style rather than just pressed italic, right? So a chapter beginning quote is one of the styles up here. We've also got regular quotes. So if you want quotations to be kind of a feature of your book and to have them stand out within the chapter, you might highlight a few regular quotes throughout the chapters and style them as such. And again, same process, type the quote in, highlight it, style it. Lots of business books are designed to be both read deeply but also skim read. And one of the really common strategies for making a book easy to skim read is to take all your most important points and kind of set them out from the rest of the text. So you make them bigger, you make them bold, you do something to them visually to make them really stand out so that when someone's just leafing through the book at speed, these are the points that stand out. It can be a good strategy, I reckon, where you make a book so that you can read the whole thing in 5 minutes if you just look at the headings and the important points. And so again, if there's an important point that you want to stand out, you simply highlight that text, choose the important point styling, and that is going to make it look like this. Other common stuff in business books or non-fiction books is breakout boxes, where you might put kind of practical exercises and that sort of stuff. Or if you're including perspectives from other people and other authors, and you want to make sure that the reader doesn't get confused as to kind of whose point of view they're absorbing at any given moment, you might use stories which are styled slightly differently. And then, as we alluded to right at the beginning of this video, but which I think are just incredibly important, when we want to emphasize a word, rather than just going over to the formatting tools and pressing italic, we instead come over here to the styling pane and we highlight it as emphasis. And as I say, what this means is every time you emphasize a word, it's going to be baked into the manuscript, and when we take it out into all these other apps and stuff, we can make sure that it remains emphasized right throughout that process. So, you don't have to become a computer programmer to be an author, and you don't have to be a designer to be an author. Your job is to take the ideas in your head and get them down on paper in a way that communicates as much meaning and as much utility as possible. And what we want to do with these templates and with all this kind of styling and stuff that we do with a book is just communicate that message as effectively as possible. And you can aid the rest of your team, whether you work with us at Hambone or someone else out in the world, you can aid the rest of your team in achieving that process effectively by just adhering to these few little rules here when you're writing your manuscript. So, when you want to make a piece of text look different, You want to understand why and style it appropriately rather than just using the formatting tools. When you want to change the layout in your document, just remember, it doesn't matter. It's going into a different app later anyway. It's going to land on a different bit of the page. But if you absolutely must do it, can you use the proper tools like page breaks and tabs and indentations rather than keystrokes? And finally, don't make the mistake of writing, reading, rereading and rewriting your intro over and over and over again. Set up a dynamic table of contents at the beginning of your manuscript, and that will help you dive into the various different parts of your book whenever kind of those bits are what's resonating or happening for you that day. So download the template from this page, give it a double click, it's going to open up in a new document, and I encourage you to start writing your non-fiction book into that template. And we look forward to seeing it as a finished product out in the world super soon. Thanks for your time. I'll see you soon.